Gatlen, how's it going?
Doing well. This is exciting. We're gonna do some fun stuff today. I'm chomping at the bit here.
You're totally pumped up. You're like, I'm ready to go.
Doing it.
It's going solo or going duo.
It's gonna be a thing.
Whatever it takes.
True story.
Cool. So what are we doing today?
So this is gonna be the first part. Is morning. Hey, Jer. Good to see you, my friend. Or afternoon for you. So the plan is that we're going to start in on a sculpture that we're going to put in a park. So one of the big reasons that I want to do this is that I have done this myself, worked with artists who come to me and they're like, oh, we want these big giant pieces in front of these buildings because there's a certain amount of the budget that goes into building buildings, as it were, and they want to be able to, get a piece of that pie. So they come to me and they're like, hey, here's the idea, but, I want to be able to create it a way that's going to, let's do this and do it. Like, there's just always a lot of changes that go into it. Like, they just want to create it, but they want to have a lot of freedom. But they don't know how to use a lot of the software because they're like working in the real world. They work with steel, they work with clay, they work with resins, casting and painting. So like, well, we can make this thing, 3D print it, and then we can go ahead and get it cast or get it built, and weld this thing together and put it out there. So they want some kind of a proposal. So this proposal is kind of my position into it. I'm like, all right, cool, let's do this kind of thing. And Twinmotion is an amazing program for getting this stuff up and out there because you can put it in the real world. You can actually get latitude and longitude for a specific place in the world and then drop your piece right there. You can have to build the environment, but you can get that whole setup. It's pretty wild. So today, we're going to build up kind of a quick little solar system inside of ZBrush, build some environment pieces probably inside of Maya eventually, not too many pieces, and then take it all into Twinmotion. So my thought is this will probably be a two-parter unless I can work really, really quickly. So,
oh boy, a multi-part. That's good.
We were talking duos. Let's do duos. We can do
to be continued. And then we're going to on the next episode. He's going to tell you what he was going to do.
We're not going to be doing the Dragon Ball Z stare down. I promise you. We're going to get stuff done.
Yeah, awesome, dude. That sounds really cool. So we're going to be using Twinmotion. That's I know Epic's been talking about that as kind of like a really good entry level 3D type application for teachers and people that want to get into it, and it's you don't hear about it as much out there, so it's good that you're going to be showing us how to do it, and hopefully people will be realizing how easy it is to use.
Yeah, I was really excited. Man who shakes fist at computer, I think is what he goes by.
Tom.
Tom. He had a chance to come out to Denver a couple of years ago and was showing this off, him and Lucas, and I apologize, I don't remember the other fella's name. There were two other fellas that were out doing it, and I was blown away on how quick and easy. They're like, here, they showed us in like 10 minutes, and I was up and running, and I was like, oh, I am using this all the time. So I start bringing it into my classroom to let students kind of know that it exists too, because you quite literally don't need to know a whole lot about 3D. It's really just kind of a drag and drop program. So we're going to take it another step and actually build something to put inside of it. So there's the idea behind that.
All right, dude. Well, I'm sure everybody's anxious to get going, so let's do this.
Let's do this thing. All right, cool. So what you see on screen is ZBrush. I am not going to be using the default layout. I have my own. So I will explain where things are and how I'm actually finding them so that you all can actually do this stuff as too. I'll probably bounce back and forth just to make it a little bit easier. But just for efficiency, I changed the UI on everything that I do. Something else that I want to point out, because we are going to be using real world units, it is really important to use real world units, as it were. I would also highly suggest that you use metric and don't use the imperial system for reasons. Fractions are our friends and ratios are fantastic, but decimal points just make life a whole lot easier. And a base 10 system is a lot easier than something other than a base 10 system. I'll just leave it at that. So I want an actual human-sized human, and lucky for us, the Unreal Engine actually has one. And I actually grabbed said human, and I always keep them handy because I want to make sure that I have a proper size. And I'm basically just importing in an FBX file right now, and this is my character. Wait for it. There it is. And you can see my little character up here. Yay, magnifying glass. This is awesome. So I'm just going to click and drag on the canvas and press T on the keyboard so I can get into sculpt mode. And now I have a size reference for everything I need. Let's go ahead and bring up the floor here so you can see it. So we'll put that in perspective. So this is our character. This is our human. You will notice that it is not faced the same direction as our little guy up here. That's fine. I'm not really too worried about the direction that it faces, because in the real world, it's going to end up whatever direction it goes. So that's not a huge deal. But I definitely want this for scale, and that's why I'm bringing this in. Now, here's a little pro tip. We're going to start off early with the pro tips. When we bring something into ZBrush, it has a multitude of subtools. So this subtool is kind of like its own little file. So if you're used to Blender or Maya or 3D Studio Max, this has its own undo states. It is kind of its own little world. Okay. So if I were to come down here and append in a new one and be like, oh, let's grab one of these, let's grab the helix, because why not, right? Helixes are fun. Now, the problem with this is that this is this is a whole new world. So this and this look like they're about the same size, right? Like they look like that, but they may not actually be. So that could be problematic. So to get around this, I know how big my human is. So I'm going to select this one, the second one here, and I'm just going to delete it. Get out of there. Goodbye. I'm going to take this one and I'm going to go ahead and duplicate it, because what I'm doing is I'm just copying this world and creating another one, another duplicate. This is a parallel universe we're running into right here. So you can just duplicate that. And then let's turn the original one off. And inside of here, I'm going to go ahead and use my move, scale, rotate to get hold of my little gear right here and change this gear into a polysphere. So now this is a polysphere. I can bring that human back if I want. He's just on another quote unquote layer. They're not really layers, but that's the important thing to know. So what we've done is we've started with a human. We know how big said human is, or rather I do. I can prove this to you in a moment. And then we've duplicated that and made another little subtool out of it. That way these have the same like units and the same ratios and the same proportions. Otherwise we can run into issues. So big pro tip right there. So let's take a look and see how big this character is. I'm going to grab my plugins here, bring them over, and we want the scale master. So I'm going to hold Alt and just click on the human. That makes this the active subtool, so I don't have to go over there on the right. And I can just hit the set scene scale, and we can see that our scale here is 182 centimeters tall. That's that Y-axis right there. So he's just short of 6 feet, like by just barely. Okay. So what that means is that if we go over here to this one and we hit that same button, we should have, there we go, so 91 centimeters. So that's the diameter of this sphere. So that tells me that they're close enough or exactly in the same kind of proportions in the world. So check, 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 triple check, double check scale. I've run into so many issues when I haven't done this in the past. There's a reason I'm spending 5 minutes on it. Okay, I want you all to be very aware of what's going on. So my thought is for this one, we're going to go ahead and build a solar system, and we're going to go ahead and do the solar system that we live in, give or take scale a little bit. So I want to go ahead and build a sun. So this first one's going to be a sun, and I'm going to make sure that I name everything properly here too. So this second subtool, you just come down here and hit rename, and we'll just call this one sun. I'm going to hide the human. We don't necessarily need that at the moment. And we're just going to kind of sculpt on top of this. Now, right now, this is very nice, clean, orderly geometry. Twinmotion can handle stuff. It's built inside the Unreal Engine, so we can get super silly with this. So my plan is that we should we Dynamesh this? Let's just Dynamesh this. So under geometry, and here into Dynamesh, when I hit this button, I would suggest leaving this at whatever resolution it's at first off, and then just hitting the button. Okay, cool. That's not too bad. Oh, I don't need project on now. There we go. And what I'm trying to do is basically just get some kind of really fine geometry that I can kind of work on top of and just kind of sculpt with. My sculpting tools, I'm just going to hold down the space bar that gives me this little pop-up. I can change the draw size real easy. You can also just hold down the S key. Oh, I can't. I've got this set to solo, sorry. But you can hold the S key if you don't have some other keyboard shortcuts and actually get at the size as well. But I'm not going to do that. Turn off the wireframe. Now, I'm just going to smooth this down, hold down the Shift key, and I can smooth this. Actually navigate around inside of ZBrush. There are a couple of different ways to do it. You can quite literally just click in the background and drag, and you can rotate, tumble around. The last place that you actually touch on the surface is where it will actually kind of rotate from, which is really nice by default. That's a really nice little feature. If you want to pan, just hold down the Alt key and left mouse click and drag. And then if you start to pan, so holding Alt, and you let go of Alt, you can then zoom in and out. Now, if these controls are a little bit weird and all over the place, that's fine. It's not that big of a deal. They are right here as well on the interface, which is really nice. So you've got your move, your zoom, and you rotate. And you can literally just click and drag on these and they'll do the same thing. I would highly suggest getting used to them. If you want to be part of the right-click army, as Mr. Grabber so commonly puts it, you can do a lot of the same stuff using the same keys, just use right mouse as opposed to left mouse. And the advantage of that is if I zoom way in, how am I supposed to rotate if I can't reach the background, right? So just use right mouse and you can click and drag. Now, of course, I'm using a tablet, not an actual mouse. So if you have your tablet and or mice hooked up, go for that. Okay, so Dynamesh, let's go ahead and just kind of make a thing. So I'm going to press B on the keyboard. That's going to give me my brush list. I'm going to hit S on the keyboard to filter down to the S keys or the S brushes, and I'm going to look for the Snake Hook 2 brush. I want that one right there. I'm also going to go to my interface because inside of here, I've got a little button. It's called AccuCurve. If you want to find this, you can go into the button, into the brushes, curve, and then AccuCurve is where this button actually exists, which is really nice. You can actually see that at the bottom of our little pop-up here. So if you hold Control, ZBrush will tell you, almost every button has this, will tell you where it is and what it does. So it's like a built-in little help menu. It's great. I love ZBrush's UI because of that specifically. So with AccuCurve, if I pull this off, look at this, I get this crazy like spiky thing, right? So Dynamesh is great for this because I can just kind of build a couple of spikes as they come off of here. And what's awesome about this brush is that what it's doing is it's looking at the surface normal. So whichever normal I'm touching, that's actually where it's pulling it out. That's a little bit much.
That's so cool. I love that tool.
This thing is a blast.
It looks like so much fun.
So I'm just going to kind of pull some of these out. I just want to create something that's kind of spiky really right now. I can get a lot more detail into this if I, oh, that's a bit much. If I, there we go, up the resolution on the Dynamesh, which could be helpful. Let's actually go this angle. There we go.
How does it know to like pull it away from the sphere rather than like off to the side? Is it based on where it's facing you when you grab it?
So the reason that this one knows is that it's actually built into the brush. It knows to actually look for that normal, where BS, the regular snake hook brush, will actually drag it across the surface or across the screen. So if I were to grab this spot here and pull it sideways, it acts like it's pulling it along the screen if it was a big giant piece of glass that I'm facing or that you're facing. So it's a little bit different. So it's built into the brush. I don't know offhand what button that is. I just know how it works. So I play with that. So Snake Hook 2 will actually find the normals, which is nice. And do that. Then we can push a couple of these in. Okay, so with Dynamesh, let's bring back the wireframe here. So with Dynamesh, as you start to pull this, and if I control and swipe, because Dynamesh is turned on over there on the right, it'll actually project the information on it. And something to remember here, much like we were playing with last week, I think, this doesn't have UVs on it. It doesn't have any of that stuff. So you can't be awesome for you because it won't. It doesn't have UVs. Like it's not a thing, right? So this is kind of cool. It's kind of sun abstract-y-esque. I do want to kind of push this a little bit farther though. So BS, and let's play with the, where are you at? There we go, the spiral brush. So the spiral brush is kind of fun. I don't know how much of this I'm going to get to work really well, but if I just click and if I start to make little circles, it'll just kind of spin the surface. And if I hold down the Alt key, it gives me the alternate function, it'll spin the other way. So I can create little, well, they're not sunspots, but what would you call those? Like
a solar flare.
Solar flares.
Swirling a bit of environment. In a hostile environment is what I would call that.
Right. Okay. Let's kind of do it from the solar tornadoes.
But everything would need to be twisted once you learn how to use this tool.
It kind of is.
Yeah.
This is true. So one of the things that I'm running into is you see the shattering that's kind of happening right here. So that's just the way that this brush works. It's very destructive on the surface, but that's fine. Remember, we got Dynamesh over here, so I can very easily click and drag. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a mask. I'm just not covering the object, otherwise it masks it. So I just want to make sure that it hangs out here and just Dynameshes it. There you go. If I really, really want to keep that exact feel and look, I can come over here and I can turn this project button on, and that will project it to the surface, and I can maintain You'll see it kind of keeps some of that shattering, which I don't actually want. But if I had something really detailed and I wanted to keep that, I can turn that on. Make my life a lot easier. Ooh, let's go that way. Get some of these. And most of them? That's most of them. As y'all have questions, let me know. Like this is your chance to come in and see what it is and how we do and want to know about things. ZBrush is a huge program. We could go off on tangents for weeks. Real easy. I'm not so sure I like this part sticking out. So I'm going to change over to my move brush. I've got hotkeys for specific brushes. You'll notice that my brushes will change here on occasion up here in the top left. It's because I've got them set to the number keys on my keyboard. Just have it move them. So BS, where's that swirl? G. There we go. That's not too bad. More than one way to build a sun, but we're going to make this one stylized. Okay, so I feel like that's pretty decent. You can kind of clean up the silhouette. It does have like a little silhouette mode if you ever want to kind of play with this, which is nice. So you're like, oh, that's exactly what that silhouette looks like. But it's a little lopsided one way or the other. So you can come in here and kind of work with this. This is amazing for like beginning working on projects. I don't use it too much beyond that. But I do find that it works really, really well when you're first starting to kind of play with silhouettes on shapes. You're like, oh, I want it to look like it's spiky from every side. Well, give it a little rotate a little bit. And you can come in here and kind of play with it.
Is that silhouette the entire workspace, or can you identify just like a selected object in the silhouette?
It is the entire workspace. So if I were to bring this guy back.
Okay.
He's in there. This is essentially what this is just another little version of this big screen. And you can, like, if you wanted to put like a reference image or something in it, you can right click on it and be like, oh, now I want a reference image in there, which is great because if you're building a character and you want that character to match that silhouette, you're like, cool, you can actually put that silhouette up there in the corner. You can just import in a texture and drop it in there, which is really nice by just right clicking on it. This is something I actually learned from Pablo a while ago. For those of you that follow the ZBrush community, Pablo's amazing. I would highly suggest looking at everything he ever does. Let's actually bring that back a little bit. Drag on that corner there.
When you put the person on there, it's like an artistic impersonation or an artistic depiction of somebody not wearing a mask today.
A cloud of problems.
It's like, here's me just walking around. I ain't got no problems. You got this big spiky ball wrapped around you.
This is looking pretty good. That's right there. All right. So here's our sun. I'm liking that one. So like I said, this isn't going to be to scale because I understand how big the universe is and it's much bigger than you and I. We can't be the center of it, but I definitely want to create a couple other little planets. And I'm going to kind of set them up in a way that's kind of in proportion, at least in the right order. And Brian, you're probably like me and you learned a very awesome acronym that no longer applies because we no longer have 9 planets. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate.
I'm just thinking about like how much that was directed towards me, being the center of the universe. What do you mean I can't be the center of the universe? Hold on a second. What's the acronym?
My very excellent memory just served up 9 planets.
Really? No.
Or my very excellent mother just served up 9 pizzas. Our very excited mother. I don't know what it was.
No, I never did those. Darn. No.
We had we used to have Boboli pizza as a kid. So she never did 9 pizzas, but we did a lot more back in the 90s. Lord.
Those were the days.
Feeling pretty happy. Let's go and re-Dynamesh that. Okay, this will work pretty well. We may end up seeing some of this faceting when we get to Twinmotion, but that's really easy. We're going to hold on to this and keep it. Now, I'm going to do something that's always very intelligent whenever you're working on anything inside of any digital program, and that's to save. So I'm going to save this before I forget. And let's do this, Amy. And I don't trust computers, so I'm going to save it once. I'm going to hit the 9 key on the keyboard. That's going to quick save it. That's this little button up here at the very top. So and I've saved it twice because I don't trust computers. I really don't. Just in case, it's saved twice at 2 places. All right, let's take our sun. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. Again, I've got hotkeys for this stuff, so I can duplicate it and rename it with a button press, which is awesome. So Mercury, M-U-R-C-A-R-Y, E-R-Y.
C-U-R-Y.
C-U-R-Y.
M-E-R.
M-E-R. Okay. Change the assist on that one. But what that did is it took this, it duplicated it, and it allowed me to rename it because I don't want to hit 2, 3 buttons. I want to hit 1 button. So I build macros in there. So my apologies for doing things fast. All right. So we've renamed this. Let's go ahead and then replace it. So again, we'll just go into the move, scale, rotate gizmo, hit the little gear, and then we're going to go into the polysphere. Yay. Now I have a polysphere. Now I want this one to be much smoother. And we're going to put a few little craters on it. We're going to use this crater thing a little bit later. Well, hello, Mr. Isaacs. I just noticed you popped in there. So this one, what I'm going to do is not Dynamesh it, but I'm going to actually use Subdivisions. So let's turn Dynamesh off. Remember, this is a duplicate of the one we just created. So Dynamesh got carried along with that because it is inside this tool palette. Just a little thing to kind of keep in mind. So let's turn that one off. If I start to divide this, what this is going to do is it's going to take every one of these quads and it's going to divide it into 4 new ones. So it divides in half. Now, you're not going to be able to see the wireframe right now, and that's because if I actually turn the wireframe off, turn it back on, then it actually updates. ZBrush only updates what's on screen as it needs to. Otherwise, it doesn't really care. So that's why you're like, oh, it didn't actually show up, right? So I can just divide. You can see we can get really, really fine. And at this point, we're sitting up at, 98,000 points. That ain't nothing for ZBrush. Nothing. Just underneath that, you'll notice that it actually says 138. That's everything. That's my human plus the sun plus this one. So that's the total points. I wish every program had this magnifying glass. Oh my gosh.
Dude, that's so cool. I was so jealous. I'm like, you snuck in a new tool without telling me.
So much good.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to put little craters, if I can remember my words here. So I'm going to put little craters on this one. To make that happen, I'm just going to change over to my clay buildup brush. You can get that by hitting B and then C, and then clay buildup brush is in here somewhere. Clay tubes, there it is, clay buildup brush. It's right there. I can't, well, I can't. Okay, yeah, but it turns it on and off. So I just totally, I grasped the cloth dimple one. B, C, B. There we go, clay buildup. And the reason I want to use this one is it's just great for building up surfaces. So you can come in here and I'm just going to start, kind of building a crater. Then I can hold down the Alt key on the keyboard and I can start to carve in, which is awesome. So let's just kind of build up a crater here. And we're going to do this the long way, and then I'm going to show you a way to make this much, much easier to do, because I don't want to have to build lots and lots of craters. I just want to build like 1 or 2, right? But this is a great exercise for, especially if you've never really played with ZBrush before. I'm assuming that some of you may have never even opened this program before. So I'm going to come in here and do this the long way and then show you some cool shortcuts. There we go. Those of you that are my students, you're going, yeah. You always do this.
You just want to do it twice because
I just want to do
that's how much fun
you're
practice,
man. You got to do it a million times. I do want to make this somewhat generic looking, somewhat. All right, so I'm going to hold Shift and just kind of smooth this outside rim area. Some of this in here. I do want some of this kind of noise in there. There we go. There we go. So now I have my crater. You're like, hey, that's really awesome. So there's a faster way to make these. So if I hold down the Control key on my keyboard, what I'm getting, and you can see it up here on the top left, is that I'm actually getting a different brush. And this one specifically, I can't hover over it because it won't show it to me. Get that out of the way. But if I hold Control, you can see it says Mask Pen. So what this does is I can mask out an area like so. And now I can't actually, make my brush a little bit bigger, I can't actually sculpt on that. It like freezes them in place. So what's cool about that is now I get kind of sloppy. And I'm like, oh, cool, I can do this, right? I can just kind of build the outside of this real quick. right? So if I hold control, remember if I swipe in the background, it was doing that Dynamesh thing. Well, right now I've turned Dynamesh off. So what it does is it actually clears that mask and gets rid of it. But if I hold control using my mask brush and I tap it, it actually reverses it. So now I can hold down Alt and I can carve in. So you can see how much faster this becomes. Cool. And kind of spin that and then zip and then clear it off. So then I get that. Then I just have to kind of go back in and, you know, kind of scuff it up as I see fit to give it that feel like it's a proper crater, right?
That's pretty cool.
Here we go. So now I've got 2 craters on here, right? We're going to put a smiley face on there because we can. Right. So the man on Mercury. So let's take this another step, because if there's one thing that I know is awesome is that repetition will definitely teach you how to do a thing. But if I'm in production, I need to get this thing out the door. I can't be sculpting unless I'm getting paid by the hour. Let's be honest. Unless I'm getting paid by the hour, I'm not going to sculpt every one of these little things on here. Like, it's not worth my time. So let's switch gears a little bit and create a brush that will actually do this for us. And to do this, I'm going to go ahead and create a whole new tool. Like right now, I've got these 3 pieces in my tool. I've got my character, and then the sun, and then Mercury. But what I want to do is leave this and go into a whole new tool. And that's pretty easy to do. All we have to do is click on this big button right here. And it says, oh, well, what do you want to start with up here? So I'm going to go ahead and start with a sphere. And back up a little bit. Now, there is something important to know about the sphere, and that is that I can't actually sculpt on it right now. Like, my sculpting brushes don't do anything. You can click on it, but nothing happens. And this is because this is a primitive. For those of you that are used to things like Blender and Maya and 3D Studio Max and all the other ones that are out of Cinema 4D, Rhino, I can actually come in here, let's turn on my wireframe, and I can actually change, you know, the actual primitive size of this and how many divisions I actually want across the surface. Like, that's all totally possible. I'm going to leave everything as default, and then I'm just going to hit this button up here. This is Make Polymesh 3D, and this will turn it into something that I can sculpt on. Okay. Well, I don't want a sphere. I lied to you. I'm a jerk. I apologize. I actually want a plane. So now that it's a sculptable object, I can always come in here, click on that little gear, and let's go ahead and grab the polyplane. And I want this because it's going to be flat, and you'll see why here in a minute. So now I have my flat surface. Let's go ahead and look at it straight on. Oh, here's the thing. If you're not used to ZBrush, if you rotate around, ZBrush doesn't have like a top side 3/4 view, like split screen kind of thing. It doesn't do that. So as you're rotating around, if you hold the shift key, it'll snap to the closest view, which is kind of nice. Okay, we're going to go and turn perspective off here as well. So let's take this one and let's go into geometry and go and divide. Really, I'm just trying to get a bunch of divisions in here. Let's grab my sculpting tools here. And divide. I'm just hitting Control D to divide this again. So now I'm up at 263,000. Let's go and divide it again. Now I'm at 1,000,000 points. Perfect. That should be plenty enough. Let's turn off the magnifying glass. Let's go into our clay buildup brush, turn off the wireframe, and I can use this masking brush to create a like a square. And I can mask off that, but I can also, if I come into here, whoops, let's go down here into, let's go to the vanilla, because I always turn this one off. Actually, no, it didn't. It's in there, right? Oh yeah, it's under stroke. Okay. I'm so used to teaching this on the vanilla version. Okay, so I'm going to change my freehand up here from this freehand into this circle. So if I click and drag, I get a circle. Now I don't get a perfect circle. So what I need to do is actually come down here and turn this into square. So this little button right here. So now I get a perfect circle, which is great because now I can actually use this to move it around. Now why? Oh,
a square is a perfect circle.
It squares it off. The other thing I want to do too, because it's giving me a hard time, is I'm going to set this to center. That way I can click and drag right in the center. And I don't need this to be really big. If it's too close to the edge, it's not going to work for what I want to do here in a minute. So I'm just going to click and drag. Yay, it's a square, or a circle. Let's go ahead and invert that and use my clay buildup brush here. And now here's another thing. Remember, I can invert it or clear it, right? But if I hold control and I tap on it, what it's doing is it's actually feathering the edge. And this is a pretty high resolution mesh. Oh yeah, I'm at like 4 million. I don't need to be 4 million. I'll do it a few times.
Going for the high score.
in here. So let's invert it and then tap on it. And let's zoom in so you can see this. And it'll feather it out a little bit. And then let's invert it and then feather it a few more times. And invert it and feather it a few more times. There we go. So then we can carve in. And I can get really sloppy with this. I'm not too worried. Now my smooth brush, now that I'm up at 1,000,000 points, it's not very strong. So I'm going to hold down the shift key. So I'm still in my smooth brush. Let's go into my brush palette. Yes, I know I'm going into a lot of menus, but this is what we're doing today. Smooth brush modifiers. So in here, I can change the way this brush is actually behaving. See, there's a giant list of things I can do. Essentially, I'm just taking it from 0 to 1, and that's just going to make it stronger. So now when I try and smooth this out, you see I get much more of an effect because I'm on a much higher resolution in here. So let's just kind of build this as a crater. And this one I can get really, really specific with. The other reason I use this clay buildup brush is because it leaves behind these little indents and strokes and scratches and things, which is awesome. There's a little radial here. Doesn't need to be perfect, but enough. I'm going to smooth that up. Now I'm going to click and invert that, and I'm going to build up. Let's get rid of the floor here. Let's build up the outside rim of this. Like so. And the idea is just to kind of build up something that looks like it was hit. I'm not exactly a meteorologist, but I know what this looks like. That's not really what these people are called when they study them, right?
Meteors? Yeah, probably not.
Total meteorologist. I should have made this smaller. Oh well, we'll see how this works. Shouldn't be that big of a deal.
They're craterologists. Duh.
I think they're geologists. I think that's how that works. Okay, so this is very like perfectly round. So I'm not a big fan of that. So let's grab our move brush and let's just kind of beat this up a little bit. Just kind of slide this stuff around a little bit. Artistic decisions, right there. Okay. Now what's awesome also, because I'm using the subdivisions, I can go down in subdivisions and you can see it, like it gets all kind of crunchy. But what's awesome is I can make big changes. And if I go back up, those changes are affecting those higher layers. And if I smooth some of them out and go up, you'll notice that it kind of smooths them up a little bit more here too. So fill some of this stuff in. I'm going to use what's called the clay fill brush. This is a brush from, and I apologize, I can never remember his name. He's one of the cats that's on the ZBrush Central, and he does a lot of live streaming. SK, he goes by SK. He's from Korea, and he makes some of the coolest like anime characters. But this brush in particular is great for just kind of filling in spots. So I can kind of fill in the volumes on this one really quickly. So huge shout out to him. I love his stuff. So cool. Okay, let's go down a couple subdivisions here because I don't need that much. I'm going to delete the higher one. And then I'm just going to kind of make sure this has kind of got some streaks in it. One side should be built up a little bit more than the other, in my opinion. But, you know, it's because I'm an artist and that's how I want this to be a thing. All right, and kind of smooth some of this down. Now, the reason that I grabbed this flat plane to do this on is this.
Oh, you're going to do that?
I'm going to do the thing.
Oh, right? Gosh. Everybody put on your seatbelts. Just take your socks off because they're going to be just blown off anyway.
Okay, so the other thing that I want to do, though, is I should have made this a little bit smaller. So I need to kind of extend to the outside edges here. So by going down, let's change this back to what it was. That one. So I want this inside area, I'm going to mask that off, to be quite a bit smaller than this outside area. So I'm just going to so I'm masking off these points here in the center, and then I'm just using my scale gizmo just to make everything larger. Let's clear that off, and then let's go back up to our highest subdivision level. Yeah, of course, that's what's going to do. So now we've got this. Oh, that's actually cool. I'd never tried that. Look at that. We actually got those streaks that came out. Ooh, that's cool. There's your happy accident for the day.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. See if I can get this. Let's try a thing. So I don't want this. You'll notice as I go up in subdivision, see how it's like it's shrinking the corners. I don't want it to do that. So I'm going to try an experiment. Let's go into our geometry. Let's go into crease, and I'm going to say crease all. Nope. Let's do crease. I think I have to mask the outside edges. There we use this very often. There we go. Nope. Okay. Dang. So we can't use a button for it. We're going to have to use something else. And we'll see if this works because I've already got subdivisions on it. So I'm going to grab what's called the Z Modeler brush. And this is your low resolution brush or modeling tools inside of ZBrush. So it's got some AI built into it. So quick explanation. If I hover over an edge, it knows that I'm hovering over an edge. If I hover over a polygon, it knows that I'm hovering over a polygon. And if I'm hovering over a point, it knows that I'm hovering over a point. So in this case, I want to hover over an edge. I'm going to hold the space bar and get a list of things I can do to it. So I'm going to crease it. These are also known as hard edges, or also, what is it? What are they on Cinema 4D? I don't remember if they're called Cinema 4D. But basically, supposedly it's going to keep it from moving. But I don't want to do it to just one edge. I wanted to do to all the edges. So let's do that. Cool. So what happened is that I get this little tiny, it's kind of hard to see, but there's this little tiny dotted line on it versus the ones that don't have it. And that lets me know that it's creased. So I want to do it to each side. Top, bottom, sides. There we go. Fingers crossed this works. Like I said, total experiment. So if I go up in subdivisions, yeah, see, it kept it in place. It kept things from moving, as opposed to freezing it, which doesn't do the same thing. Okay, this is what I want, because I want this area right here as my canvas, because I'm about to copy this. Yes, I'm going to copy the 3D sculpted geometry. This is exactly what I'm doing. So to do this, B, X, and what I'm looking for are the extractor brushes down here. Now, all these brushes have this actually built into it, but these ones just will kind of work really well because I can just kind of throw them away afterwards. So I'm going to use this first extractor brush. Let's get experimental. Let's do this drag rectangle one. So I'm going to use the drag rectangle one. So what I need to do is make my brush pretty good sized so that it's bigger than whatever it is that I'm about to copy. So let's try. That's looking pretty good. Ooh, this might be too big. I'm going to press the G key as in Grandtastic. My cursor turns cyan. I'm going to click and drag. Oh, it's going to do it that way. Wait for it. It's got to think about this. So what it's doing, you can see over here in the alpha, it's trying to create an alpha out of that. So let's try this. So G, click and drag in the center. And I should get, it's not going to do it with this one very easily. Okay, that's fine. Let's go with BX. We can do it with the other extractor brush. G, and I'll click and drag and go straight down across it. Have I got enough in the background? Oh, see, I was afraid it was going to be this. And it might be that this thing is like so huge. Yeah, it's not happy with this one today. Lame.
You don't have enough disposable canvas.
I'm wondering if that's what it is. Yeah, but it's okay. We can do this.
Ooh, buddy.
Let's see if this works. Let's see if this works. So BX extractor brush. If you ever want to reset your brushes, that's really easy to do. Inside the brush palette at the very bottom, you can reset current brush. That'll get rid of what was in there, which is nice. So this will be interesting. All right, experiment away. Here we go, right? We got a pretty good size. So G, and then we'll drag across there. It's going to give it to me. Man, it is not happy with this one today. Lame sauce. All right, that's not a problem. We have another way of doing this. What I'm going to do is I can use, here's a fun one to say. Oh, I need to bring it up here. This one right here. So the Mrgz Grabber. Yeah, say that one 10 times fast, right? So what this is doing is it's grabbing the material, the red, green, and blue, and the depth. So that's what the Mrgz Grabber. I always say that wrong. Yes, let's go ahead and switch. So this is just knocked it down to 2.5D mode. I am no longer in sculpt mode. You'll notice most of my UI disappeared. So if I click and drag, I get this little box, and I can hold the space bar and move it around. So let's do that. Check it out. Now I got this depth grab over here. And this is exactly what I was trying to get with this other one, but I just had to leave the thing. Now what's screwy is that if I start to click and drag and sculpt, I get a whole bunch of these. And they are set up so that they understand three-dimensionality. which is a trip. So Control N, let's get rid of all that. Click and drag once, hit T on the keyboard to go back into sculpt mode. Now, this has an alpha in it that I can grab. Let's grab that. Let's go back to our Mercury over here. Oh, that's not what I want either. It's going to make these giant lumps. Well, that's just meh. That's how I feel about that. All right, let's try this. Let's get rid of this one. It usually works much better on a flat surface, so we're going to try this then. It's going to give it to me today. And it's still not going to do it. Look at that. Well, that's just angry today. That's just no fun. Ooh. How can we do this? How can we do this?
I've seen you do it before.
I know. It's awesome. It's awesome when it works.
I know.
Okay.
Oh, that's actually.
So we changed our brush. Let's go into alpha, and inside the alpha, we can modify this. Let's turn our contrast down. There we go. Let's also turn our Z intensity down. There we go. Now we're getting it. There we go. Perfect. All right. So let's go back to that other brush really quick. See if that's going to affect it. Because it's doing that. Okay. So the alpha is working. Let's turn the intensity down. There we go. So it's a little bit of, still getting a couple little lines in there. So that is kind of cool though.
That is really cool, dude. That's.
So what's awesome too is that I can save this alpha out. So if I wanted to export this out, I can save this. We'll just name it brush alpha for now. And then I can bring that back in later if I ever want to kind of do anything with it. I could also save this as a brush, and then I can always use this for whatever I want. Let's also do one other thing with this alpha. So there's a little thing in here called a radial fade. Is it going to let me do it? Turn it up a little bit. Yeah, because I don't want this edge. I'm getting this little edge on there, so we have to fiddle with that. What I want. Let's try our mid-range down. Try our mid-range up. No, it's just not happy with that. Don't be danged. Just crank that way up. There we go. I'll just crank my mid-range or my radial fade up a bunch. There we go. Let's turn my intensity up a little bit too. Here we go. Maybe not that far though.
Is the spacing something you could adjust?
I can adjust the spacing, yeah. Huh, that's just not happy. All right, well, we know that other brush works. So when all else fails, do whatever works. There we go. Perfect. But this, let's turn my intensity up a little bit. So now I can come in here and I can literally just bloop, 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 bloop.
Oh, that's actually really cool.
Right? Because now instead of going through here and sculpting 50 of these things, I can do like one or two, change the alpha, and literally, not that this is what Mercury looks like by any means, but
what if you make it really big? What's it look like?
And you can like layer them on top of each other too.
Oh, double hit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little one side of there kind of thing.
Nice.
And turn it down and get a really big one that's shallow. Turn it up and do a little one inside of it. So yeah, it was really kind of fun to play with. Sure. In there we go. Smooth that out a little bit.
Gatlen sandbox. That's our. Maybe
right.
He'll let you in his sandbox. Maybe not. Maybe he'll throw sand in your face and make you get away from his.
But I also kind of want to play with. I don't want this to be a perfect sphere because Mercury's not a perfect sphere. I don't know exactly its dimensions, but I know that it's not a sphere. So here's our Mercury. I'm going to smooth this down a little bit. It's a little bit much, and that is because into our brush palette, hold down Shift, go into our smooth brush modifiers, and turn that smoothness down. There we go. So that's not nearly as strong as it once was. All right, so that's kind of some craters. There should be some other kind of detail on here as well. So let's add in some kind of noise across the surface. So this is actually really easy to do. Over here inside the tool palette, there is a little section here that's called surface. And underneath surface, surprise, surprise, there's noise. So we open up the noise, we get this totally new interface. Oh no, I can't get rid of my magnifying glass. That was weird.
Lucky you.
Oh, look at that. I know, right? So this, let's kind of zoom in on the surface, is actual just noise. And we have a little like noise modifier thing here. So we can say, oh, how do we want this to kind of, behave? So we can kind of mess with this. If we don't want one of these little dots, we can just drag it off. It goes away. If you drag it off, bring it back in, it gives you an angle as opposed to something round. Bring it back, and then it's nice and round. So you can kind of play with this stuff. Let's go like that. I'm liking that one. Let's zoom out a little bit. And let's take our strength and we can turn it up and down a little bit. And I don't want to go too far because it'll like shatter it, and that's not happy time. And then we can also change the noise scale. Strength down somewhere in 2. Oh, if we go up, what happens when we go up? There we go. Then we get a little dents. We go this way, and then we get little pieces that stick up. So these look like our little tiny rocks, right? So those are good. I'm happy with that. Let's just go and say okay. Now, for those of you that are taking notes, this is what the geometry will look like if I was at a really high resolution and I actually applied it. This is just a fake. Okay, so like I said, ZBrush doesn't render anything until it's happy with what it likes. So if I turn this noise off, you'll notice it goes away. And what I have to do is I have to say apply to mesh. So this little button down here below it will actually apply this noise to the surface. So there we go. And you'll notice it kind of went away. And that's because I don't have a lot of resolution. I'm only at, like I said, I'm not even at 100,000 points, right? So let's undo that. Let's go back into our geometry and let's go ahead and add in another subdivision. Okay, so now I'm at 300 some odd. Let's go ahead again. So now we're at 1.5 million. Now let's go into the surface. And if I say apply to mesh, you see it retains a lot of that, quite a bit more. Now we've got this kind of awesome little surface to it. Now, the surface noise that I've just added is going to be a little bit overkill because once we get into Twinmotion, I can kind of dial in a couple other things. And at 1.5 million, that's going to kind of kill the scene when we bring it onto the surface or into camera range. And that's not going to be awesome either. So again, we want to think about what this is going to look like in the final piece, not just here inside of ZBrush. Even though ZBrush is amazing, sometimes we have to leave. So what we're going to do,
self-parenting moment right there.
We'll eventually leave and go away. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this 1.5 million and I'm going to knock it down. I'm going to do what's called decimation. So inside of the Z plugins, okay, so that actually exists right here. There's a Z plugin spot right here. I've just docked it over here on the side. What I'm looking for is the decimation master, and lucky us, they are not in alphabetical order. So decimation master, there's a bunch of buttons in here, but really it's just these ones down here at the bottom that I'm worried about. So I'm going to knock it down to like 250,000 points. So you hit a button, it looks at the whole thing. It's going to take a minute. You can see it actually changing what it's doing up here at the top of the screen. While it's doing that, I'm going to take a drink. How's everybody feeling today? We're doing good? Good times out there? Like awesome?
Quasar was here. He had to go to school. But he was here. We got some comments asking about learning Unreal. Should I invest the time? And I said, heck yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Unreal is insane. I was doing some stuff yesterday. Well, you saw some stuff I was posting to you. Y'all can't see that yet. It's coming. Some of those fun things that I was playing with. I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like, this is super cool. I love playing with it. Like, I have a hard time going to sleep at night because I'm always thinking about projects. If it's not ZBrush, it's Unreal, right? Okay, so it did its thing. And you may be thinking, well, it didn't do anything. And that's the beauty of the way this thing works, right? So I'm going to go one undo step because up here at the top, there's this little bar. It's got these little black spots in it. And this last one is the current undo step. So if I go back one, okay, you'll notice we're at 1.5 million, right? And if I go forward one, you'll notice we're still at 1.5 million. Why are we at 1.5 million? Oh, there we go. 250,000. There we go. So what happened is, let's look at the geometry. This is what it looks like now. Right? If I go undo once, this is what it was before. And this is that 1.5 million. So what it's doing is it's looking at the surface and it's saying, well, I don't necessarily need all of those polygons, so I can get rid of quite a few of them. but I'm going to retain the surface as much as I possibly can. So I basically just retained all of that detail that I sculpted in, but now I have a whole lot less points. That's the whole point of this. Right. Okay, cool. So now I've got Mercury. That's awesome. My very excellent. So Venus is pretty much a sphere. So let's create Venus. So we're going to do duplicate. So let's do this, and we'll call this one Venus. You know how to spell Venus. We got this one. Also, let's save. Let's again replace this. Which way is down? There we go. Also important to note, bring your floor back. There's a button for it, right? So let's go ahead and turn this one into a sphere. Polysphere. That's awesome. I don't know. I don't have any clue on how big Venus is compared to the rest of these, but I definitely want it smaller than the sun. And from what I can tell, the sun is huge. There we go. And so this needs to be smaller. I cannot see the sun. Solo is not on. Oh, there it is. I did. It was just really small. Okay, cool. So we want that one to be smaller. Where's Mercury? Oh, Mercury's ginormous too. I'm going to make this translucent so I can see how big it is through the object. So let's say Mercury is like that big. And then Venus, Mercury. Oh, I can't see it because the sun's in the way.
You're not supposed to look directly at the sun. It's not smart.
I don't plan on doing any of the satellites for each of the planets, but there's that. Okay, so that's Mercury. Let's say that's how big Venus is, right? All right, so this one, I want to, let's turn off that translucency there. I just want this to be like super, super smooth. So I'm just going to Control D. That's just going to divide it once. This is going to make it super smooth. And once I actually get it into Unreal, once I get it into Twinmotion, I can make changes to this and make it even more smooth. So when I export it, so Venus done, right? So Venus, and then after that is going to be Earth. I'm just going to make a duplicate of this one for Earth too. We don't need to make anything extra for that. So there's Earth. It's going to make another duplicate of this one. Mars. Actually, let's just take, let's delete Mars. Oh, here's something that's actually, I should probably point out. When you delete one of these subtools, unless you've saved your file, they're gone. There's no getting them back. This is not an undoable operation. This is what this little warning is telling you. Okay, ZBrush is really good about telling you if you're about to really screw something up. This is one of them. Once it's gone, it's gone. So I'm going to say, okay, that's fine. I'm not worried. So let's take Mercury here. Let's make a duplicate of that and call this one Mars. And Mercury and Mars, a little bit different in size. Let's do that. Let's Mercury a little bit smaller. There we go. So Mars, let's drag Mars and put it down below. So my very excellent memory so Jupiter's next. Let's go ahead and grab Earth. And duplicate that. I'll call this one Jupiter. Jupiter.
Yep.
E-R. Okay, I'm thinking Jupiter. It might be an O. All right. So Jupiter, let's drop that below. Where's the sun? This is pretty good size compared to the sun. So we'll leave that one in. It's also a gas giant, so I'm not going to have to do a lot of stuff on that one. So after J becomes S, so we'll duplicate that one. So Saturn. All right, so with Saturn, let's actually put some rings on this. Hide all these other ones here. So with Saturn selected, let's turn on transparency. We want to add in some rings. Now I could easily create another subtool and make that the rings, but I do want them part of this one. That way, when I move it around, they'll go along for the ride. So before, what we've been doing is we click up here and we select like the ring. Oh, hold on. This one's got subdivisions, so I can't do that. Let's go down, delete them. There we go. So if I come in here and hit the gear and then I hit this, like this 3D ring, you'll notice that my sphere just totally disappeared. It's replacing it. And I don't want to replace it. That doesn't do me any good, right? So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mask this thing off, then go into it, and then do the ring. And it's really hard to see because it's tiny, but it added it to it as opposed to replacing it because these ones were masked. Remember, like what we're doing with the craters, it's masked, so it can't go anywhere, can't do anything. So it just ignores it, which is awesome. And then you get these crazy little things that ZBrush loves to throw at you. So we've got an L divide, we've got coverage, we've got S divide, we got a twist, we got a radius, and we got a scale. So what's screwy about these is that they're little cones, but what's awesome is that you can just kind of click and drag them, and you can see that you can actually change the surface on the fly. So we can change that radius real easy. So let's say I want my rings to be about that far out. You'll notice that I'm not rotating this yet, and that's because if you rotate it and then start playing with these, it'll kind of snap back to where it originally is, which I don't want it to do. But we're going to play with these and then rotate it. And then this one, so this does our coverage. So this is our divide here. So I'm going to set this to 4. It's really tricky to do, but you can do it. And then if I change my twist, I can actually rotate it so that they're actually facing.
Oh, cool.
So you can go in and out with this. Also, if you're going to do jewelry, this is a great thing for rings, by the way. So I want it at 45. Cool. So there we go. Now, I'm going to keep hitting the W key until I get in and out, because you can get in and out of these 2 gizmo modes. So I get this one, I'm going to rotate it on its side. So hold shift, I can snap it to degrees. I've got mine set to 45 by default. ZBrush does this at 5 degrees. So there's that. Okay, so now I've kind of got my rings. They're a little bit fat. So this is something that we need to start thinking about when it comes to actually putting this in the real world. What is this thing going to be made of? If it's going to be made out of steel, or if it's going to be made out of resins, you're going to have to think about the thickness and the width, and if it's going to be 3D printed. So talk with whoever that you're working with and understand the mediums that they're going to be working with. So in my case, I don't care because it's going to be all digital, so I can kind of do whatever I want. So I can kind of skinny these suckers down, make them a little bit thinner, right? So looking at from the side, just making these really thin. So about there-ish. Now, the other thing I want to do is I want to make these wider. So let's turn on our wireframe. Let's clear our mask. And what I'm going to do is go back into the ZModeler brush. Remember, this is the one that knows whether I'm hovering over a polygon, an edge, or a vert. Okay. So how are we doing on time, by the way, there, Cleverlike?
We're at an hour.
We're at an hour. Okay, cool. So let's finish up. Let's finish up the solar system because there's only a few left.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is if I hover over this polygon right here, hold down the space bar. So QMesh, I don't want to do a single poly, and QMesh is kind of like extrude. It's got some superpowers to it, but it's kind of like just extruding. So I'm going to, instead of doing a single poly, I'm going to come over here and tell it to do a poly loop. So what this will do is that when I hover over this, here's another little thing that's important to understand, is that you'll notice that depending on where I'm at on this polygon, I get this little indicator, this little orange indicator. And that tells me which way ZBrush is thinking about actually executing this command and which direction it's going along that poly. So I want it going along the inside loop here. So I want to make sure this is faced either this way or this way. I've got 2 options here. I got a 50-50 chance. And it's a little tricky to do from a distance, but I want you to be able to see this. So I'm going to give it a shot. So if I click and I drag, it'll actually take that whole poly loop and bring it in. So let's do this once. And if I tap it again, it'll know the last command I gave it, and it just does another one at the same width. Now, I don't want that, though, because these are rings on Saturn. So I want some of them to be thinner. So I'm going to make a little bit of a gap there. Whoops, come here. Oh, a little bit of a gap. And we'll do another one there. And, of course, I can do this on the outside as well. Out. Well, and I do want another gap there, actually. So let's bring that out a little bit. And then bring this out. Okay, cool. So you'll notice that I've got different colors. These are what are called polygroups. They're groups of polygons. Ta-da, right? And what I want is I want these ones right here to be a group. This one's already a group. I want these ones to be a group, and I want those ones to be a group. And the reason I'm going to do that is because the ones that are in between, let's do this in yellow, I'm going to get rid of this loop, that loop, and this loop. I can do this really, really quickly. So first, let's make actual polygroups. So if I hover over this, instead of saying QMesh, right above it, there is polygroup. And I don't want to do a single poly. I want to do another poly loop. So same idea, I click, and that gives me that one. And you'll notice it doesn't do it on the bottom, though. So if I click, that'll give me that there, too. So let's do that one, and that one. And let's actually do this one, too. And then that one, and that one. And I definitely want to do these ones on the inside. Whoops. Oh, that one. I get that one. So I've got this green group. Yeah, it looks like you all can see that on screen. So I got green and then I got blue. So now let's hover over this polygon. And what I want to do is QMesh a poly, not a poly loop, but polygroup all. So what it's going to do is it's going to look at the IDs, these colors, and it's going to say, hey, those are the ones that I want you to do this QMesh thing to. So if and this is why I use QMesh, if I click and drag, remember I can pull up, but if I go in, whoop, they disappear. So now I've got gaps in there. Awesome. Cool. So now I've got my gaps in Saturn, and I don't have to worry about gravity. So when I put this as a sculpture in the real world, I'm fine. I don't have to worry about it. It's good, right?
Spoken like a true planet.
It's going around and around. Okay, so now I'm going to run into a bit of an issue because I want this sphere to be nice and smooth, but if I divide this, actually it's not too bad. Oh, it's not doing too bad, but I figured it was really going to destroy those rings, but that's actually not too bad. Maybe I'll just leave that. That's kind of cool. Here's our second happy accident for the day. Awesome. All right, let's go into geometry. I'm going to delete those lower subdivisions because I don't need them. I can always get them back if I want, but we're not going to worry about it. Okay, so there's Saturn. Just served up. So this puts it at Uranus, which is basically another gas giant. I could put the ring on it, but it's not really big enough to be a concern. So let's take Earth. We'll keep that one. US.
What'd you call me?
All right, let's take Uranus and drop this down below. Give ourselves a little bit more room. All right, cool. So this one should be a little bit smaller. Where's Saturn? Oh yeah, that's fine. Except that's there. There-ish. How big is Jupiter? Oh, Jupiter needs to be bigger. Oop. There we go. Okay, so Uranus is there. And just because I'm old school, we're going to put Pluto in there too. So we'll put a planetoid in there. Why not? Now remember, Pluto is not a pure, it's not a pure sphere. It's a little oblong. So we'll just kind of goof this up a little bit.
Do you have Neptune already?
Got Neptune. A little smaller than Uranus. There we go. Okay, so now I have all of my planets and the sun, and they are all based on the size of our character. That's cute.
Solar Sam right there.
It's a thing. All right, so this gives us, hey, not a face. Good to see you, my friend.
Hey.
So this gives us pretty much everything we need for Twinmotion as far as what we want. So we now need to just kind of start exporting these pieces out. And the question may be, well, what kind of files does Twinmotion actually take? Well, it takes just about anything that comes out of a CAD program, which is amazing. So if you're using CAD, just start exporting it directly to it. And depending on the program that you're using, you can actually get the AutoCAD programs or CAD programs, I guess AutoCAD's trademarked. Any of the CAD programs actually talk directly with Twinmotion, which is great. ZBrush does not talk with Twinmotion. And it was never really built for that kind of a thing. So we're going to quote unquote hack this. So really I just need to export this thing out. Now, before I do that, there's something that's really important to understand. So let's do this on Saturn. And this is part of the reason that I built it the way I did. So Saturn is a couple of different polygroups. Okay, we kind of talked about this before. Each one of these polygroups, when I send this out as an FBX, gets read by Twinmotion as a different object because we're going to tell that it's a different material. So we're going to end up with two pieces for Saturn, which is just going to be the way it is, which is fine. Now, right now I've got, this blue polygroup, this green polygroup, and this orange polygroup, or red, or whatever color you want to call this. So I'm going to get three different pieces. Well, I don't want that. I want to make sure that I've got one for the actual sphere, for the body of the planet, and then one for the actual rings. So I need to make sure that these ones over here in the rings are all one polygroup. So real quick and easy way to do that. If I hold down Control-Shift, I get a new tool. It's called my Select Rectangle tool. And if I click and drag, anything that's inside that green area becomes visible on screen. So this is great for working on things like fingers and capes on characters. But in this case, I don't want to do that. So I'm going to Control-Shift tap instead on this, and it hides everything else. If I Control-Shift swipe, it inverts it. Okay, so you can kind of get at, maybe you want to select something and hide it so that you can actually see something else. So now that I have this set up, let's go ahead and turn the lines off so you can see this. So again, these are still 2 polygroups. So what I'm going to do is come over here into the tool, come into polygroups, and I'm just going to say, let's say group visible. And that makes it all one group. So when I Control-Shift-Tap, it brings everything back. And now I've got 2 separate polygroups, one for the rings and one for the planet. Now, the reason that I'm doing this, I kind of briefly touched on it before, is that I'm going to get 2 separate materials so I can make one of them, I don't know, granite and the other one metal, depending on how you're going to build your pieces. So there you've got those. So then all of these planets, okay, so each one of these, so all of these guys plus Pluto, I want to make sure that I can send them all out as one FBX so that I can drop them into Maya and start to build the environment that I'm actually going to put all these pieces in. So we'll go ahead and export this and we'll go ahead and call it a day for today, unless there are questions in there. I can definitely go through them. So each one of these, so let's say sun, and you can see this is all one polygroup, which is great. So come up to the top to export, and we will put these in a folder. Call this one solar system. Wait for it. Maybe. Are you having a conniption at me, ZBrush? Oh, yeah, it's having a conniption at me.
Oh, boy.
Just something that's awesome to know is if ZBrush starts to crash, it auto-saves right before it does. It's freaking awesome. Okay, so here's my sun. Go ahead and save that one out. Select Mercury. I've got a hotkey for this, so we can save that one out. Now, this one's saving as OBJs. I goofed up. Let's go back into the sun, export that. Change this from OBJ into FBX. Then we're going to save it because I want this pop-up. So what's cool about this is you can send out the selected, the visible, or the all. So we're going to send out all the visible ones. There's those little eyeballs over here on the right. This lets me know that these are visible, and then we'll send it out as an FBX. This will work fine. We're going to smooth normals. This should get rid of any of that little artifacting that we see on the sun or in the other ones. We're going to leave that smooth normal amount up to 100. There we go. And then this button right here, this is the important one because this is going to export those polygroups as different materials. So when we drop them into Twinmotion and we start to drop materials on it, it'll just cover the whole thing. And in Saturn's case, the 2 separate pieces. We'll just hit OK. Export done. Ta-da! So I should be able to come into here. And, oh, it actually combined them all together.
I was wondering about that. So this is all the planets?
Let's see here. Embedded. Polygroups is sets. Yeah, so it went and did all of them.
Okay.
I was thinking there was a way to do to each one of them separate. All right, we'll just do the selected one. All right, that's fine. There is a way to automate this to make it a whole lot faster, but we can also just boom, boom. Writing data. Mercury's a little heavy. It's a heavy metal, man. Venus. That one. Yeah, it's only 1,000. Earth. That one. That one. That one. Mars is also a little heavy. Yeah, it's fine. That'll be okay. It's just a smaller size. Now I can also, while I'm inside of Unreal, when I'm inside of Twinmotion, I can change the sizes of these as well. But if I can get them right now, I'm so going to do it. I'm not even going to kind of fight it. Like, one of the things that you may or may not know playing with a lot of these programs is if you can get it right prior to having to try and hack it and make it right, by all means do so, because otherwise it's not even going to be worth your time. Part of the reason I ended up, trying to get that brush to be right the first time with a plane versus actually trying to do it on the surface of that object. But there it was. No, I don't need to send this character out. That's fine. This guy's ready to go. I've actually got a copy of him anyways. He looks so pretty. Hey, so there it is. So there we go. That's everything I've got for now. We'll jump into Maya next week, and we'll actually build an environment. And maybe we'll get into Twinmotion by the end of it, but we'll see how that kind of goes. So
wow.
Let's double check. Yeah, we got them all in there.
And so this is like obviously you as a creator sculpting, you know, creating all of the pieces to create something completely custom. Is Twinmotion geared towards being able to kind of drag and drop and use existing assets and marketplace and stuff like that?
100%. You can bring in, it's actually got a lot of the pieces, I should say, are actually from the marketplace, as the Unreal marketplace, as well as it's got pieces in it from Quixel's Bridge too. And really the main reason that it was built was for the architecture industry, so that you can take data from whatever program that you're building all your stuff in, CAD, Revit, SketchUp, all that stuff, and just drop it directly in there and just start to populate it. We've got animated people, we've got butterflies, we've got oceans, we've got cars that follow paths, we've got, it's insane, all the stuff that's actually inside of it. So this is really just, you know, me building the pieces that I'm going to need, you know, and the next step is to then kind of assemble them in a way that's going to work well enough for what we need to do inside of the next section, because sculpting is a lot more fun inside of ZBrush than it is inside of Maya. You can do it in Maya. I don't condone that kind of behavior, but you can do that. So yeah, so we're going to use Maya as opposed to using a program like Revit or SketchUp. You could also do it inside of Blender. I don't know Blender well enough to be quick at it, so it would take me 3 hours to do what I could do in like 20 minutes inside of in Maya. So we're going to jump inside of that one, but you can use anything. It's super cool. Just make sure your scale set up, because that will help a lot.
I think it's good to point out, like, you know, how there are multiple approaches with Twinmotion. It's not like if you want to use Twinmotion, you don't have to do all this stuff, right? You don't have to be knowing these prerequisites to get there. So
yeah, this is all just extra stuff because it's ZBrush and I love it. One of the things that I should also point out here too is that you can inside of the Epic Games Launcher, if you haven't already grabbed Twinmotion and you really do want to kind of play with this stuff, I highly suggest doing it, because it is literally like a drag and drop program. It's amazing. So up here at the very top, there's a Twinmotion button, and you can download it. Now, there are a couple of versions that are inside of here, and just play with it. Get in there, work with it. They've got a couple of, by they, I mean, Epic has some online learning stuff. All of the videos combined for Twinmotion, I don't think are over 4 hours worth of information. Like, it is a tiny program. And you're like, oh, it's like Unreal. Like, no, it's not like Unreal, like, at all. It does a lot of stuff just automated so that you don't have to, which is fantastic. Makes life so much easier. And what's awesome, and we'll get into this later, when you create your presentations, if you've got a VR headset, you can actually set it up so that you can look at your world in VR and like navigate around inside of it.
Yeah, that's super cool. Like, you have the environment that you built. That's cool. Yeah. So Twinmotion is like, I know like Epic talks about that as kind of a lightweight, get started in 3D, create these environments. Like the return on investment is real high with that, meaning like you don't have to work real hard and deal with the level of knowledge that you have on ZBrush is not what somebody needs in order to make some cool stuff in Twinmotion. So it'll be fun when we get into Twinmotion after building our own custom assets. So what I like about what you're doing is like, it shows somebody, if you learn these tools, like you can build something original and special. And if you have that in your head and you need a way to get it out, you have all these things trapped in your head that you need to get. That snake hook brush is pulling them out. It's like the Harry Potter thing, pulling the memories out. Yeah, that's exactly the.
I just came across a program I didn't know existed. Sculptron. Oh man, I don't remember what it is now. It's a sculpting program, much like ZBrush and Mudbox and what Blender's got inside of it. And one of the things that it's got that's kind of extra is that you can animate it. So it remembers, not that you can't in these other programs, but you can animate it so that, you know, you change your sculpt from one thing to another. So if you want to do like dripping wax, you can actually get it to like animate the polygons doing the thing. what's even wilder though, and this is why it made me think of this, is that talking about Harry Potter and pulling the memories out of it, is that it'll voxelize it and it'll also turn it into like point particle things. So you can actually like sculpt this crazy shape and then animate it, but then turn it into like these particles, and it's got this kind of fog. It is wicked. I was like, oh, that is a thing. I was like, oh, I need to download it and play it. I'm like, there's not enough hours in the day. So one of these days, it's on my list. It's on the back burner on my list. I'm going to sit in there and play with it.
Yeah. Well, if anyone's ever used it, share. Help Gatlen decide where it goes on the priority list. How many front burners can we have? That's what I'm like, okay, what kind of kitchen do we have? Like, I'm going to have as many front burners as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I want all this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I get it. We're human. We're finite.
Well, cool, y'all. Thank you so much for sticking around. For those of you that did,
Yep.
Next week we'll jump into Maya and we'll build some kind of environment. I've got a few ideas, but drop something in the comments if you want to see me build something specific. I would like to try and build kind of an ocean cliffside kind of spot to put our planets. So you've got this giant vista behind it. That's my plan. But if y'all have a city park that you want to drop it in, remember Twinmotion, we can grab environments from just about anywhere in the world as long as it's in their little database, which is connected to the interwebs. So that's helpful.
Sounds good. All right, dude. Well, thank you for sharing your wisdom and creativity with us today.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll stay tuned for the next episode next Wednesday at 9 Mountain Time. All right, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, thank you again. Adios.